The Tower of London is perceived to be possibly one of England's most famous castles and fortresses. Its reputation as a brutal and impenetrable fortification dates back to the 11th century when it was first built. Throughout its history it's been the scene of beheadings of high-profile members of the aristocracy and even queens, a scene of torture and brutality in attempts to extract information, and was also a rather chilling place to end up should you be imprisoned here. Throughout the medieval period it was also a royal mint, a menagerie and so much more, but most prominently its reputation of torture usually shines through. It's a scene, for example, where Anne Askew, a young girl, was racked ripping her bones out of their joints because of her religious preaching. However, today we're going to fast forward to the Second World War and we're going to look at the fascinating story of the last person executed at the Tower of London, a Nazi spy named Josef Jakobs. Remember to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Josef Jakobs was a German citizen born in Luxembourg in 1898. During the Second World War, in June 1940 he was drafted into the conflict and served in the Wehrmacht as an Oberleutnant. Josef Jakobs' service would be interrupted, however, as his criminal past would be exposed, and it was discovered that he was imprisoned in Switzerland years before for selling counterfeit gold. Because of this he was forced to resign from his position in the army and demoted to a Feldwebel, the German version of an NCO or a non-commissioned officer. He was then moved into the meteorological service of the German army, and from this he began working for the Abwehr. The Abwehr was the German military intelligence service for the Reichswehr and the Wehrmacht. They were involved in acts of espionage and had many different branches inside them, such as sabotage and counterintelligence. In September 1940 he went to Hamburg to be trained in espionage and would return to Berlin at the weekends. On one of these visits he mentioned to a friend that he was planning a mission to England as a way of escaping to America, where he had an aunt living there. His friend then turned this information over to the Gestapo and Josef was called back to Hamburg. The Abwehr at this time still considered Josef Jakobs to be a good spy, and on the 8th of January 1941 he was sent to The Hague to be trained in transmitting and receiving wireless messages. On the 31st of January 1941, Josef Jakobs left Schiphol Airport near Amsterdam for England in the belly of a German bomber, most probably assumed to be a Heinkel 111. Josef parachuted out the aircraft at around 8:30 p.m. and injured his ankle upon exiting through the narrow hatch. He had never really practiced a parachute jump or landing, and when he hit the ground his ankle broke, landing in an English potato field belonging to a local farm called Dove House Farm. Throughout the night he would lie there with his broken ankle, smoking his supplier's cigarettes in excruciating pain. The next morning at around 8:30 a.m. he fired some shots into the air with his Mauser pistol. He was soon found by two farmhands who were on their way to work. One of them stayed with Josef, whilst the other went and notified a member of the local Ramsey Home Guard. The Home Guard then notified the police, reporting the capture of a possible enemy spy. When the police arrived, Josef was searched and a wide variety of items were found on his possession, including the damning evidence of a wireless transmitter, which was buried in the soil near to Josef. He was then thrown onto the back of a horse-drawn cart and taken to Ramsey Police Station. At the station he was interrogated, and it was decided that he was fit enough to be transported to London. The police also made a complete account of Josef's possession, and a more thorough search was conducted in the area, turning up Josef's code disc which he had torn up in the night. Josef would then find himself moved between hospital and prison, having received some treatment for his broken ankle. He was taken to Latchmere House, the MI5 centre, for interrogating captured spies. He would leave Latchmere briefly for more treatment on his ankle, but over the next 3 months he gave several statements to the officers there. Sometimes spies would be turned into double agents if they were suitable, but because Josef Jakobs' case was publicised heavily, it was decided that he wouldn't be suitable to be turned into a double agent. According to the Treachery Act, neutral aliens and British citizens were tried by a civilian court by a judge and jury. Their punishment would be death by hanging, unless they were soldiers, which in this case they could be executed by firing squad. Enemy aliens could also be tried by military court-martial, and since Josef was a German citizen and had no alien or British accomplices, it was decided that he would be an excellent candidate for trial by court-martial. An application for this would be lodged and accepted, despite Josef helping the British to break another German spy who had arrived in England. His court-martial proceedings would be arranged, and on the 4th and 5th of August 1941, Josef Jakobs was tried by General Court-Martial at the Duke of York's headquarters in Chelsea. It was clear he was an enemy alien, and also a member of the enemy's armed forces, so this is why the court-martial went ahead, unlike most World War II spies who were subsequently tried in civil court and hung. The prosecution and defence would put forward their case. However, after just 10 minutes of deliberation on the 5th of August, the members of the court decided Joseph was guilty, sentencing him to death, and he was then sent to Wandsworth Prison to await his fate. In the early morning of Friday the 15th of August 1941, Josef Jakobs was then taken from Wandsworth Prison under a military escort and driven to the Tower of London. Upon his arrival, a doctor offered him some medication to calm his nerves, and Jakobs would accept this. He was taken into a miniature firing range, which was found within the inner and outer walls of the tower, the same place where First World War spies were executed. A firing squad had been assembled from members of the Scots Guards, and they were armed with Lee Enfield rifles. Josef Jakobs was sat on a wooden Windsor chair at the end of the firing range and tied to it using a rope. Upon his chest a circular target was pinned, and a black hood was placed over his head. The commander of the firing squad then gave the signals for the firing squad to take aim. Joseph's alleged last words were directed to the firing squad, telling them to shoot straight Tommies. The 8-man firing squad with their guns pointing at the German spy were ready. 3 of the guns had been given blank bullets and 5 had live rounds. At this moment, the firing squad shot, instantly killing Josef Jakobs and cementing his name in history as the last man executed at the Tower of London. After his execution, his autopsy confirmed that he'd been killed by a bullet through the heart. A funeral service was conducted for him, and his body was buried in an unmarked grave at St Mary's Catholic Cemetery in Kensal Green in London. Josef Jakobs, as mentioned before, would be the final person to be executed at the Tower of London, even though he was killed in extremely different means, at a very different time and under different circumstances than the beheadings that the Tower of London became famous for. He died within the same wars as Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, notorious King Henry VIII's wives, who would meet their fate at the end of an axe head. I wonder, however, if worldwide conflicts would occur in the future, if the Tower of London would be used again as a site of execution, but who knows. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Once again, thanks for watching.